Go to the cloud. Great. Okay, this is unusual. So what happened yesterday is I thought the first class was yesterday. So I came in, there was nobody. So I just recorded a 1 hour thing, but it might have been just maybe today is the actual start date. Okay, so is that the case? Because that would determine whether I go to the recap or whether I just start everything again. Yeah, today is the first day from the email. Ah, okay. I see. So that's what happened. Cool. Then, okay. Without further ado, I will start screen sharing. So in today's session, I will basically tell you how the class works, why you might want to take the class, and who it's for, and like give you a glimpse into the first fundamental thing. So let me just share the screen rather. Screen to share. Okay. Can everybody see the Google Docs? Chat up. Okay, so this class is lightweight full stack. If I have to summarize what this class is hoping to teach you, is the ability to be a full stack developer, which is to say you can build everything yourself, but in a way that's really efficient and lightweight. So you don't need a team to achieve what used to take an entire company 5 years and millions of dollars to do. You can maybe just do it by yourself in a week's time, in a month's time, very lightweight modern technologies, and achieve the same thing, and if not even do a better job, because you don't have all these communication things and organizational breakdown. And obviously when you do team up with other people who are really good lightweight full stackers, it's an amazing place to be. So yes, so the Zoom lectures will be recorded, and I'm also going to use something called Explain. In fact, the reason I'm teaching lightweight full stack and the reason I learned a lot about it was because I'm currently a solo founder myself. This is basically what I build. It's like this. It's a website with blackboards. That's structured in a way that's good for MIT, but I don't want to go into that now. But yeah, these things I've learned in lightweight full stack were necessary for me to survive. So hopefully they're actually battle-tested ideas. Later in class 2, so actually this class is going to be project-based. So soon you're going to split up into small groups. I will find a way for you to randomly be randomly assigned different groups, and so you get to talk to different types of people and then find your group and then come up with the problem and solve it with a web prototype and build it really fast and iterate. Okay. It is very interesting talking to. Okay. So, all right. So class 1. So I already did the introduction, how the class works. Oh, by the way, everybody will use the same technology stack. There actually is surprising a lot of debate about technology, and sometimes there are debates. What I will say is, in this class, I will pick, and if you trust my experience, the simplest yet the most powerful. So some stacks are just simply better. They're just better. They're better in terms of better documentation. They're better in terms of you can do. They have more power. They're better in terms of they're just better in every sense. And when you pick the right technologies, things just become exponentially easier. Like in web dev, there was you can spend 7 hours just like trying to import a CSS if you're using the wrong thing, and that's not good. In 7 hours, you can also do very very amazing things. Okay, so that's basically the class. So in this class, you will learn how to be you'll learn from a solo founder who had to build a website by himself. And so learn some lessons. He will try to teach you how to build web prototypes very efficiently, even without a lot of engineering resources. And by the end of, and you will work on a project in a small group, maybe 2 or 3 people. And given that context, I was now go into the actual content, like web dev, like how do you do it, and actually go into detail. But so far, are there any obvious questions that I haven't answered? Super excited. Great. So I actually want to try something. So I mean, yesterday, because I thought it was the first lecture and recorded it, I already did like a little explanation. So instead of me talking for 40 minutes like a lecture, which can work, but not always the most engaging. I think I want to get our class to be a bit more lively. So, but again, you can veto this. Would you guys like to go into breakout rooms and just get to know each other for 5 minutes before we dive into the material? Or do you want to just listen to me talk? I guess, how do you do this? Do you use a poll? A poll, add a question. Do we break out or do? I guess just put it in the chat. Dive in. Everybody's feeling lazy. Okay, cool. Okay, now I'll just dive straight into the material. Since you have the chat, err on the side of asking too many questions. Okay, so I think the first thing to really, I guess, explain for me is what is the difference between traditional full stack and lightweight full stack. In fact, you might think everybody is on modern technologies, but actually you'll find something really weird with programmers, which is, there's certainly a lot of programmers who are really good and always learning new things, and they're great. They're kind of intimidating, to be fair. But others not so great in that once they learn the technology, they like to stick with it. And so they end up, so a lot of web dev, actually end up teaching you things that, in my personal opinion, aren't that great. So let's dive into it. So do you see the traditional versus lightweight? I should be able to tell. So here's what a traditional, can everybody see the library? Can someone write yes or no in the chat? Okay, so let me explain what is the difference. Okay, what is the difference? Now, so traditionally, okay, so a website is really a HTML file. You can see there's maybe the JavaScript and CSS coupled together. So a website is really an HTML file that's passed around the internet. Sorry, one last question. Can you guys see my mouse? Okay, great. Okay, so this is a website. This is what you as a web developer are writing. And then you also write some Node.js code. So you write some code in Node.js. I'll explain what that is in a server where, so you teach the server that when a laptop tries to connect to it and makes a request to it, send my website to that laptop over via the internet. And this works the same for for other laptops. And then you have to have some place to store the data. YouTube has data, like you have to store it somewhere. And so there's some way for your website your website is a function of what is on your database. I think that's a good way to think about things. Okay, and so now here's the thing, that might sound okay, and that sounds very normal. And we all heard of servers, but let me just give you a few scenarios where you can imagine, why do products take years to develop? Why does, obviously some startups are amazing and they do very fast things, but what could take a year? What could take a decade? Well, what is so hard about it? Well, just to give you a glimpse into the potential havocs, when a server, so this is a server, you wrote your code, you wrote your HTML, this is your website. This orange thing is your website. The server passes the orange thing to your laptop. So now you have it. The thing is, if the data changes on the database, so like let's say it's Facebook and someone made a post, this guy's website is out of date, and websites are out of date and not syncing in real time are kind of crap in 2020. And so what you have to do is, well, you're screwed in this case. Well, either you have your server like check the database that's already a headache. Like, do you send once? So that's a problem. Every time, I think I don't want to go into it, but think about that as a problem. Okay, and for some people who have experience, MongoDB is a database. React, you might have heard of it. That's the thing you use to write code that ultimately becomes translated to HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. MongoDB or other databases, that's a database, and it allows you to inject data into your website, or like your website is dependent on what's on the database, right? So they work together, and then there's a server. And typically in a traditional stack, you have the server that is responsible for sending the HTML and being the middleman in managing the data. So whenever someone, this laptop wants to write a new Facebook post, that requires a database operation, and the server is the middleman, and the server actually does the operating. And so there's a lot of, it seems okay, but actually it's not really. Like, it really, it's an additional moving part. And so what a lightweight full stack is, first of all, it innovates. So two things that the lightweight full stack, the modern frameworks really innovated on. The first thing is here in this part. It innovated on how you write HTML, JavaScript, CSS code. So, I'm not sure how many of you have taken 006 or are planning to take the Python courses here. 6009, etc. But we use Python, right? And instead of C or other lower level languages, and because it gives us powerful abstractions, which part of it means you can define something, and once you've defined X, you can define Y using the definition of X. And now you have the definition of Y given the definition of X, you can use Z. So with 3 sentences, you've expressed an exponential amount of information. And so it's really good. Now, it will still be compiled back down into ones and zeros as bytecode, but you saved yourself a lot of time. And so remember this thing when you think about lightweight, like so React, Vue, Angular, Svelte. I'm not sure. So these are like some of the new frameworks that are out. What they do is they give you an additional layer where you can write something called a component, which is really, think of them like, you can define, okay, a function in Python is, you can define functions in terms of other functions. You can recurse functions. So think of it. So you get it's an additional layer of abstraction. When you use these frameworks, it's an additional layer of abstraction. It gets compiled down into HTML, JavaScript, and CSS when you run. So it's like Python getting translated into compiler code. But the point is, now you weren't writing compiler code. Now you're writing the high-level abstraction. So you saved a lot of time and let the computer do, so you get a better language. You get a better high-level language. That's the first thing with lightweight full stack. So here's the second thing. So, okay, by the way, this is gonna get a bit, this is all a bit theoretical. So I think in about 10 minutes, I'll just actually write some code so you can connect the dots. But yeah, so we'll do something. It gets translated down to the HTML, JavaScript, CSS, but that's all the browser knows. The browser reads HTML. That's what it does. And okay, now here's the thing. Here's another thing that's really cheating that is now possible with modern full stack, which is you don't need a server. Oh, you can have, it's now possible, some servers, it is now possible for some databases for you to directly talk to the database. This turns out to really save a lot of time and prevent fundamentally a lot of edge cases from happening. So what would happen is, suppose I wrote the website and then someone receives my website on their laptop. Now, in the previous synchronization problem, which drove like an entire engineering team mad, who are all on salary. Now that problem that they're paid to do doesn't even exist, right? Why would the website be up to date? Well, because every time the client fetches a website and opens the website, there is you program the website to make a call to the database to receive the latest copy. Not only that, whenever the database changes in a way that relates to this current page the user is looking at, you wrote code that ensures, and which is very simple by the way, because of what the library gives you, that ensures like this change is propagated to the website. And so your website is always up to date. So not only did you ensure correctness, you also just did it in 2 lines of code instead of 1,000 annotating. So some of the defining characteristics of lightweight full stack is serverless. Really, like you don't really have a server. Like you get rid of the server. You use components, which is like something that doesn't exist in HTML, but it's something made up, an additional layer of abstraction called components, and then you get that down into HTML, JavaScript, CSS. And okay, I think that's enough. I think it's better to go into code now, but that's basically it. Any questions before I go into code? Or if you would like me to move on, you can also write move on. Good to go. Okay, so let's dive right into code. So what I'm going to do now is, I think after all, if the claim is, to be able to do things very fast, If the claim is to be able to do things very fast and build things very fast on your own, on something that would have taken a company to do, then maybe I should try to maybe prove it. So, okay, is there an existing product, Lyft, Instacart, Facebook, that you want to see me try to build in the next half an hour? Obviously, I'm not going to build the whole thing, but so some in a way that convinces you that it isn't actually once like it's actually possible to build it really quickly. Any requests? So I'm going to build something now to demonstrate. TikTok. Oh, Lyft. Can we have a third idea? Because the thing with TikTok is, I guess it could work. Okay, not TikTok. Please, not TikTok. It isn't Spotify, Instagram. Okay, we'll do a little vote. I think that maybe that'll be good because this actually determines like our next few days. So it's a pretty important decision. And so polls, add a question. What should be the canonical example that we build? What clone should we build? So, okay, actually just type it into the chat. Okay, let me music out. The poll thing on Zoom is really difficult to use. Twitter, email, calendar, music app, Google. Google is actually a great example of something that's not front end, and that's a perfect anti-example. Birdscooter. Okay, one more minute. Let's come up with, and then you guys can vote. Vote on thing, and then I'll override, and I'll just like make a decision. But I want to kind of gauge what's Birdscooter. Email, calendar, music, Twitter, Cinemap app. Okay, I think that one is actually a really good app for when we split up into projects. That'd be. So I'm avoiding things that have the map because so there are map APIs out there, but sometimes there's more of like an initial thing where you have to read the documentation and then like you do the things their way. And so that might not be very good for class. But once I'm familiar with those documentation, then I want to do something that you can just do with Vue and a database. Okay, you know what? So I have to avoid the lifts and anything. Okay, for this kind, I'll avoid something that deals with video and something that deals with maps. And I'll avoid the things that seems to be done. Let's do Twitter because of the recent ban of Trump's account. So we all are aware of Twitter. Is that cool? Okay, I'll try to build Twitter as much as possible. So, okay, let's get down to it. I'm still sharing screen on this one, right? So I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay. Okay. Now okay. I know probably not, but is there someone Twitter? I'm trying to think if I actually understand how Twitter works. Okay. I'm gonna screen share. Explain. Which one is it? This one. Dude, technology is actually pretty hard to use. I'm getting lost with all the chats and code is like Cypher. Okay. Make Zoom but easier to use. Oh, I accidentally misclicked. Okay, I think I have all the technology sorted out now. Okay, so we have 28 minutes. So I'm just gonna briefly sketch and make sure we're all on the same page of what we're building. Let's go to new board. Is it okay? So Twitter, we're gonna build a website. And it's gonna be called Twitter. And you can make tweets. Okay, so there's a way for you to make tweets. And for now, and how does it work? Like all your followers receive your tweets. So all your followers. So from your followers' perspective, you see the tweets of people you followed, and there's some algorithm behind that. But there's so few tweets right now, it doesn't matter. There doesn't have to be a recommendation. So how about for the first prototype, we just have. I mean, this is kind of like Facebook for now, but okay, let's just do that. I think that'll be sufficient to show, like, put the concepts together. So you can make a tweet. So this is number one. You can make a tweet, and you can see the tweets of everyone, and you can see that it's everyone's tweets. All good? Okay. So now I'm opening Visual Studio Code. Share the screen. Okay. So I have something set up over. So here I'm running a command. So for the sake of time, I already kind of, when you're first initially using a server or like initially setting up a project using a front-end framework, it takes about like 10 minutes to like just set it up. And so I already done that with, so I already done that. So I might as well just, so I'm gonna do that. But when you actually do it, you have to go through the steps, and it won't take long, but it's just following steps. Now, the first step is, oh man. Let me just gather my thoughts here. Yeah, so we're gonna just start with what a website looks like. I think this is, share screen. Just share screen one. Okay. So yeah, maybe this is not the greatest example. There's so many things entangled with it, but okay, I just have to do 1 minute worth of things that I can't explain, and then we're good to go. Go to source, router.js. Can you guys see me typing the creating a Twitter clown component? Okay. Okay, great, thank you. This is a Twitter clone. So I'm not gonna explain much. So this is HTML, and this is, it maps to the user interface. So there has to be a way to program the user interface, and they decided HTML is the way, and there's some rules. Anyway, so if the website is working, so right now I ran a local version of the website. So think of it like yeah, don't overthink it for now. Just take it from me that you can run something locally, and I'll explain what that means, and then you can see how your HTML code looks in the browser when it runs before you actually deploy. And that's really good for development because you get fast feedback. So localhost 8080, I think I hosted it at Twitter clone. So we should see what I wrote on the HTML, which is, this is the Twitter clone. Okay. So this is our website. So far we haven't done nothing, okay? But it's a start. Okay, so let's start with the, how do I, okay. So now we just need to create a way for people to, for you to create a tweet. Okay, so we might need, so I'm gonna do a lot of things which I'm not gonna fully explain, but you can see how they're reasonable, and then explain it more as we do the later courses. But here the point is to give you a glimpse into like the pace and what web dev might look like in the nitty gritty, and like the annoying problems that you might have to deal with. So beautify. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a library that where someone already wrote CSS. So I don't have to write the CSS for myself. I just use what they wrote. And I'm going to look for a something which allows you to input something. Maybe like a text area. Okay, so they give you examples. I'm just going to use a default example, text area. Okay, and now I'm going to put that in my source code. So now I should see a text area, like the same text box that I just saw on here, but here. Okay, so as you can see, not good. Well, pretty much there. We have to fix some things, but okay. So now we can type something, but this is not real. Like there's no database. This is just, I'm just typing and this doesn't actually work. Next thing is a way to submit it to a database. Okay, and what happens is, and so going back to the idea of, I'm going to constantly refer back to the diagram I drew. Let's get rid of all these. Okay, oh, I already have it here. So we're writing the blue thing. Now we have to interact with the database, and the database we use is Cloud Firestore. Now I already have a database set up, and you really a good way to think about a database is really it just stores variables. Like if you define x equals 3 on Python, that is a database. Except when you don't run the script, it's gone and it doesn't persist. And every time you rerun the script, x is still equal to 3. So it persists, but it really just like an independent thing that stores data, a database. So I'm gonna create a new collection called tweets. And I'm just gonna randomly create one. And so the idea is if I can store data on this database, like tweet number 1, and then maybe the tweet has like a a title, no. Okay, variable names are hard. This is not a great field, but hello, this is my first tweet. The idea is if you have some sort of data, and if your code makes assumptions on the type of data it's receiving from the database, then you can display the data on a UI. And that really is just a website. So how do we put data? Okay, how do we fetch the data from the database? And how do we create a tweet and put it on a database? That's what I'm gonna do now. So there's some boiler code. There's some code which I won't explain much, but once I explain view, is syntax. But what I want you to take away is there's a way for you to interact with databases with some code. So there's this initialization snippet which Firebase provides you. So you copy and paste this. I didn't write this. You just copy and paste this from Firebase. Now so we're connected to the database. So we can access and interface with the database by importing it like this. Again, lots of things that don't make sense, but no need to focus on that for now. I'll tell you the important things to take away. So we want to write a function that says, create tweet on database. Okay, and we want to find a way to trigger the function. So maybe we'll just add a button. Create tweet. So what that means is when you click it, this function is invoked. And now you can access the, this is just syntax, dot set. So the function is add, you add something to the database, and the abstraction the database uses is an object. Again, we'll talk more about it later. So you could say, title, tweet.title, content, tweet.content. Now you'll notice these variables aren't defined. I'm just kind of, and when you're creating a tweet on a database, going back to our website that we, our current website, we want our thing to be the one stored on the database. So we have to access what we typed. That turns out to be pretty simple. So data return. Again, ignore these syntax. Just focus on the fact that there has to be a way, and there usually is a way a framework provides for you to translate what the user has typed into some JavaScript variable. Otherwise, there's no way of interacting with data. Oh, by the way, if there's any questions, just ask. Okay, great. So I'm going to call this the tweet content. Notice this is inconsistent, so I'm not even going to have a title. It's tweet content, and it's empty string, and vModel tweet content. Again, this is all very wishy-washy, but just think of it as when I type some things, some string. Now, this vModel ensures that whatever I type is stored on this JavaScript variable, like a Python variable. And then, so now I can use it whatever the way I want and then add it to the database. Okay, so I'm gonna try that, okay? And console.log. So before I make the tweet on database, I'm gonna show it. My text, what I typed is, so component one root. Okay, so Usually there is just some things that have to be done. Okay, now we should see a button and a create tweet button. So I am the president, create tweet. You should see what I typed, I am the president, but tweet content is not defined. This dot tweet con. Okay, so I had to use this, otherwise it was undefined. So that was a bug, and I got impeached. Create tweet. Add is not a function. It's not a function. Import db from. Oh. So I have to specify where on the database I'm adding the data, right? Because the database, there were classes, tweets, users. I have to specify I'm adding something to the tweets collection. So that was the mistake. There's always a lot of things. That's why always do code when you're very clear-headed, because you avoid a lot of errors. And sometimes errors lead to more bug potential. db.collection.tweets.add. Okay. Okay, so now with any luck, this will work. If you wasted time, if you enjoyed wasting time, it wasn't a waste of time. Great tweet. Okay, so you see in the console log, we did successfully capture what I typed. Now the question is, did this get saved to the database? And let's see. Well, it did. So if you enjoy wasting time, it wasn't a waste of time. So we have this. This is real. This will persist. Okay, so we're closer now. Okay, now we just have to have a way to display the tweet. So maybe newsfeed tweets. I'm not very familiar with Twitter, so this might be a very, but okay. So, but it's no good if the data just lives on the database. We need to fetch it and we have to display it. So there's two things. Again, finding a way for it to become a JavaScript variable. That's called a state. And then finding a way to represent it on the UI. That's the UI. So UI, state, database. These are the typical three locations you will deal with in web dev. So how do you fetch? Well, there's something called the created hook. And I'm going to go, again, just assume this code is run when I run the app. So I can tell it to run some functions. I'm going to go db.collection tweets.get. Don't focus on syntax. It'll all be explained. Await const. Yeah, so there's some very annoying things about dealing with databases sometimes, but all I'm trying to do is fetch the tweets and then print out what I fetched, and then store it into a variable like fetched tweets fetched from database. It's an array, and then push is the equivalent of append in Python. So you're just pushing things into array, so tweet. And then given that you have now, if I assume this is correct, now at the UI level, I could do something like template v4 tweet and tweets fetch. Some database. H5. It's an annoying thing where you have to do this for some reason, which I don't understand. Okay. So now what we should expect, if you enjoy wasting time, it wasn't a waste of time. That should appear on top of the website. It doesn't, tweets request is not iterable. That's awkward. So it's good that I printed it out. So it turns out to be an object, and you can't just iterate over object with like that. So I want to iterate over object.docs. So this object's docs property, because that actually is an array. So I'm just gonna make. I've used this a million times, by the way, and and I still get this wrong. So that's why web dev can get very long, because like even sometimes the simple things can. But if you know clearly what's going on, the debugging never takes long. It's only when the fundamentals aren't right, like it's easy to go around in circles. So tweet request dot docs. That should. Okay, so as you see, you know, we fetch. This is my first tweet. So we fetch both tweets. This is good. Now we just have, but why is it not getting displayed? To be fair, I don't really know. I suspect. So, but we know where the problem lies, right? We know we have the data. Now the problem is with displaying. So what's going on? So tweets. So we know it's somewhere here. Tweets fetch from database. First, I'm going to try to do. First, I'm going to print out tweets fetch from database. Yeah. By the way, I would even though I'm very conscious about saving time, I would not cut this from the recording, because this is what you're going to face a lot when you use web dev. So I want to kind of just, so this is a very useful glimpse. Things aren't just going to work. So tweets fetch from database. I should expect to see an array here. And then here I should see an object printed. If it's not, it's weird. So let's see. So this should not be an empty array, right? We fetch the data. There's two of them here. This is empty. So I suspect the push operation isn't really working. Maybe I made a typo, tweets fetched from database. Silly me. I did. Don't ask me why it's dot data, but it just is. Okay, we see it. It's getting rendered. Now we just had to render the content, and you can see we can also store the date. Now, how do you make it look like Twitter? Well, you just make it look nice, and you just get a card. Just find something you like. This will do. How do you copy this? Yeah, let's copy this one. Okay, let's go with this one. And scripts. Okay. Button actions. So I'll just get rid of that. Get rid of that. Make a subtitle. So when I use the curly brackets, it means I render the variable's value rather than as a string. So otherwise, I would just print out tweet.content on the website over and over again. But you don't want it. You want a dynamic value. You can really, it wasn't wisdom. This is my first tweet. Okay. And then, yeah, so now, I mean, that's pretty much, okay. And then you can see that now it just becomes a land of like, okay, so make the UI better, make sure it synchronizes, make sure you can follow people, make sure, you know, there's a, but you can start to see like within half an hour, you can kind of create like the outline of it. And, you know, referring back to the diagram. So we kept coding here. We kept writing weird languages or weird sentences that is understood by a modern framework. And then we tested locally. But when we actually want to deploy it as a website, so everyone can use it, we run a command that compiles it down and then deploy it to a server so everybody can fetch it. So we could do that. You know, why not? I think that's, so Thomas asked a question, if you click the two rectangles in top right, oh, thanks. It does not show up, but I'm glad you asked. I'll do it though. So the reason it doesn't show up is we only fetch the data once. We make a one-time fetch. So there's no reason when we add a new tweet, our website would know. So if you want, but actually I did talk about the synchronization, didn't I, before? So I'll just show it. You could do something like this. So I'm gonna cheat a bit because I already wrote this code, but it's not long anyway. Actually, you can just copy it from Firebase. They just give you the snippet of code. It's called a snapshot listener. We have 1 minute left. Okay. Okay. How about this? I'll just end the lesson and then do this. So like for those who want to go, you can. So this lesson, you know, this class, we went over like kind of how the class would be. It teaches you how to do full stack very quickly. You're gonna work on projects next time and split them into small groups. And we'll talk more about the actual fundamentals of what makes good code and what makes good database design and what makes good UI design and things like everything. So that's what's gonna come up next. But today, I'm just gonna finish off with synchronizing the tweets and you're free to go. And I'm happy to answer any questions and stay behind as long as I need to. Thank you. So Thomas, so I'm going to synchronize things now. So instead of doing a one-time fetch, what I also want to do is I have to have a way to, the terminology is listen, like listen to the database when it changes. And because if there's a way for me to invoke a function whenever the database changes, then you solve the problem. Okay, and that's called a callback. In fact, we used it here. Like this is, you know, create tweet on database. That's a callback in response to a click event. So really, we want a fetch database callback that responds to the database changed event. And Firebase is good in that it literally gives that to you. That's what a good API does. It makes your life a lot simpler without. So what might that look like? Well, realistically, you would look for it, right? You know, Firebase, real-time sync. So maybe you'll search something like that. It might be store and sync data in real time. You'll see a lot of things you have that I don't really know what's there, but that's part of web dev. You just try to find things. Read documentation. And then you try to look for things and read and write data. You're like, oh, there's so many things I don't need, but you're getting closer. And so listen for value events. So this is again why it's so important to understand events, because events is something that's not just about Firebase. It's fundamental to JavaScript. Event-driven function callbacks, things like that. But anyway, so you see, they give an example. You can just copy it. So it's like, you do .on, you give a location on a database, you listen to it, and on the value change, you can trigger a function. So this is a arrow function, but just think of it as a function. This is a function, and it'll be called whenever the event goes. Let's copy this. Create it. Yeah, we probably want to put it here. So let's comment this out. And so we only really need 2 more minutes, I think, or maybe 5 more minutes, given we already have this. So now we just have to replace this location with. Okay, to save time, this is the wrong one. I'm just going to do db. db.collection.tweets.ons. Yes, I went on the wrong documentation. So that will happen. That actually does lose engineering time. And it happens more often, but we're using Firestore, not Firebase. And so if I use that, that wouldn't have worked. So on snapshot, and then we put in, let's define a function, like function fetch tweets from database. We can do, and it takes in an argument, it's like, result from database. Okay, this should work. So this should work. So what it says is, listen to this location whenever it changes, including the initial fetch, run this function. And this will be correct. And because our UI, given that this is correct, will just work. So everything would work. But we're just changing one layer of the different abstraction layers. So I bet something is going to go wrong. So I'm going to still. Let's see the local host. Fetch tweets from there. There's one problem. Okay, this seems innocuous, by the way. This actually would used to take me and a lot of my friends like 1 to 2 hours debugging. It's basically saying this doesn't, like this dot tweets fetch from database is undefined. But we literally knew, like I copied it from here, like this should work. And I bring this up because I'm gonna also emphasize on JavaScript fundamentals, because to someone who understands JavaScript fundamentals, you'll know that when you use an arrow function, this keyword will not be affected, something similar to that. Whereas with a function, it affects the value of this. It creates a new scope in some sense. So if you use a function, this will always be undefined no matter what. You can't use a list keyword. So you really have to write things this way. There is a actual difference, you know, const fetch tweets from DB. So this variable is a function. A function can be a variable, by the way, in JavaScript, and then do this. And this, I don't know why I changed the name, but will work. But again, that could have, if I didn't know that, if I didn't understand JavaScript fundamentals, that would take me a long time to figure out and a lot of frustration. Fundamentals are important, and we'll go over that, of course. Okay, so let's see if it works. Cannot access fetch tweets from DB before initialization. Oh, you guys should, yeah, I need to define this before. So with functions, you can define it after, but with arrow function, you have to define it before. But these are harmless, like they take like 1 second. So these bugs we like. Tweet doc. Okay, now it's circular JSON, which tells me I should push tweet doc.data. Again. Okay, so far so good. Now to test a real thing. Does it synchronize? So if I write this tweet, I expect my above UI to also respond, react to the database change. Okay, create tweet. Oh, but I think you guys figured out why that happened. But yeah, the code was re-rendered again, and it syncs. So that's how we would do it.
Yeah. Is the arrow function akin to like a global function in other languages? Is it just changing the sort of area which it affects the code, or what's an arrow function? Like, does it just make it global so like it can interact with everything? Or like what's it doing?
There's a subtle thing about the arrow function and a non-subtle thing about the arrow function. Think of it like a lambda function in Python. You can just, if you want to just use a function once, you don't have to define it. So in fact, the way I used it here is very unintuitive. You're welcome, Thomas, by the way. Because the thing that is unique to an arrow function in this example is you don't even have to define it. You can just put it straight in. And sometimes when you can even do it like this, and sometimes when you're just using one function once, it actually makes the code better. And so it allows you to write define functions without defining it. So let's go lambda function in Python. So I think this will still work. Yeah, it did. The non-subtle thing about it, so don't confuse it with, don't think about it as a global function. Just think, so the more subtle part of the arrow function, so the only difference besides not having to be defined is it doesn't create a new scope for this keyword. So when you create a new function scope, this keyword is like is no longer from the parent. So it just simply, so the arrow function simply inherits this keyword from the whatever context it's in, whereas the function creates an independent context. And that turns out to not be that useful a lot of times. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I was just using the wrong terminology, but yeah, that was what I was asking. Yeah, cool.
Uh-huh. Great.
I had another question though. So if you wanted to add like in through the database, there was different contents or like there was tweets and then there was, could you add users? Like how would you add like users and tie specific tweets to those users?
Uh, there are many ways to, if we're talking in general, that's called relating data together. So, you know, and there are many ways. The simplest way is you store an ID maybe on. So, we right now we only store the content. So there's no way to know who created this tweet, but we store an ID of the user, and we know who the user is. So, okay, I logged in. I'm a user, and I have my own ID, and I can make a request to the database and go, hey, give me all the tweets where. So you do a query. That's called a query. So you're not just fetching everything without any query. You're going where the author ID is equal to my ID, and then you'll just get, and then the database just gives it to you.
Okay,
But there are
that
other
makes
ways
sense.
of doing it too. But something it reduces into that relating data problem.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
You're welcome. So does anyone have any other questions about anything? Since I'm also very inexperienced in teaching. Oh, I think we're the only two people. Okay. Well, I guess this will be the end, and yeah, it'll be recorded. You feel free to go whenever.